Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Daredevil issue number 194, cover dated May 1983. This is a very well designed, especially coloured cover. The pencils are by Ed Hannigan and the inks are by Klaus Janson. And if I had to guess, I would say there's a good chance that the colours might be by Klaus Janson as well. What I really like about the color design for the cover is that we have two contrasting color palettes here. We've got the orange, the yellow, the magenta against the blue of the figures in shadow. This is a scene more or less from the interior comic itself, from the inside story, but it really is suggestive and intriguing and mysterious here, especially those pitchforks, given that Matt Murdock's alter ego superhero identity is Daredevil. I really do like too, and I think that this is down to Klaus Janson, the hatching there into the cover title logo. One last thing to note is that the little Spider-Man figure down here is the figure from Marvel films at the time, and also the letterhead figure of Spider-Man from any letters that would be sent out from Marvel at the time. Okay, so let's open this one up to the first page. We don't get a splash page to start with. This continues what's been happening since issue 191, where we're getting done in one stories, and we really don't have a sense of where Daredevil as a character is going overall, with the departure of Frank Miller. So a little setup here, set 70 years ago to begin with. We have a Puritan fundamentalist type father with two sons. It would seem one of them likes to draw, and the father cracks down hard on that, because he says here in his biblical language, "Ye persist in making the graven images that are an abomination in the eyes of the Almighty." So this is pretty fundamentalist stuff. I like the way that the point of view is turned around into the hearth of the fire. So we're looking out at the father breaking the what would I call it there, the piece of timber that the boy had been drawing on, and getting ready to throw it into the fire. Then the other tattletale here says to his father with a big smile on his face, "I've the switch, Papa." So the father's there getting ready to beat his son. "Drop your drawers, Jeremiah." And the son demurs. He says, "No, Papa, I won't be beaten." And instead he takes one of those fire logs and knocks his father over the back of the head. "You will not beat me," he says. So the question is, how badly does he knock him there? The other character here with the eye patch. And I was wondering about that. I was wondering, was that another nod to biblical fundamentalism, like if your eye offends you, pluck it out? Is that what this is implying here? Makes more sense when you read the whole issue. Anyway, Jeremiah here with that big smile on his face says, "They'll condemn you," or he's not Jeremiah, we'll learn his name later. He says, "They'll condemn you for this, Jeremiah. You'll suffer, you'll burn for this, Jeremiah." So what an opening. Very unexpected. Let's turn the page, and here we get a really great double page spread. I really think that is cracking work by Klaus Janson. The figure work on Daredevil as he's leaning out over the edge of the brownstone apartment building, looking down to the street. We see this wooden buggy there, horse and cart. Two of these fundamentalists as well, but it's the present day. Obviously 70 years have passed. I like the way that the shadow of the cart or buggy is rendered there on the street too, with that hatching and cross, loose hatching and cross hatching. And also Klaus Janson using a screen tone there for the shadow on Daredevil's arm. And I like the procedure. Well, it's kind of like the authentic architectural detail of how we have these kind of iron fence and spikes here to prevent somebody from walking easily from one rooftop to another. That's really good stuff, and you can see it from the other side here in this particular panel. So now we get the title of the story, Judgment, and the writer is Denny O'Neil. So Denny O'Neil coming on for a couple of years as writer of the title, mostly writing the issues until Frank Miller returns. And the artist, Klaus Janson, so he's doing pencils, inks, the screen tones, but he's not doing colours on this particular issue. So that is handled by Glynis Wine, who's returning as colorist. And there you go. Oh, and because Denny O'Neil is writing this issue, they need someone else to edit it. So you can see there guest editor Linda Gran, because that was a rule under Jim Shooter. He wouldn't allow the writer editors that there had been in 1970s Marvel. So if you were writing an issue, you couldn't edit it also. One last thing to notice is the magenta kind of description of Daredevil's radar sense there as well. So I like the whole double page spread. Really, really excellent. Very impressive. So Daredevil runs to the skylight here. These guys are knocking on his front door. It's 5 a.m. in the morning. Hold your horses, he says. That's kind of funny because they've only got the one horse. And he opens the door. They're asking for him by name. You're Matthew Murdoch, the lawyer. And Matt replies, yes, but I don't receive clients in my home. And my office hours begin at 10. So Matt does that. I like that because obviously Matt Murdock as Daredevil is out late in the night in his Daredevil costume, fighting crime and so on and so forth, and keeping Hell's Kitchen free of ne'er-do-wells. So he likes to have a lie-in, and he only opens his office at 10 a.m. I like that. Also, this is a really interesting angle here in Klaus Janson's pencils, this kind of worm's eye view. We're looking up at the two guys there. This guy's head mostly in silhouette above his shoulder. It's good stuff. Let's get past these advertisements. And here we are. So they give Matt a wad of cash there. And they say, our father wishes to hire your services. Here is money. And the other guy says, and here is a note explaining your duties. And Matt replies, you realize I'm blind? And this is kind of funny what they say to him. Have someone read it to you. And they're off and away. Yeah, that's good. So here we have Matt using his super sensitive fingertips to check the money, and he realizes $1,000 bills, 50 of them, so $50,000. And he reads the note, and he says, he asks himself, who am I supposed to represent? Couldn't be Jack the Ripper, he's dead, but it's someone almost as infamous, unless this note's a con of some kind. No way a blind attorney can tell. So I think I'll pay my new client a visit as Daredevil. And then we learn from his thought balloons here, he must not like company. This place is 40 miles from the nearest town. I had to charter a helicopter just to get within running distance. So it is upstate New York, we'll learn a little later in the story itself. There's a high wall that Daredevil's got to overcome. It's not a problem for him, he thinks. At the top of the wall, he senses with his radar sense the ground below is full of points. Nasty surprise for anyone in too big a hurry. So this residence is well defended. I like the detail there of the musculature on Daredevil's arm and shoulder. That's nicely done by Klaus Janson. We get to kind of a sketchy DeLuca effect as he somersaults down from the top of the wall, avoiding those spikes, and he continues thinking. I'd expect a big-time crook like Jeremiah Jenks to plant landmines or use an electronic alarm. So why is it all low-tech security? This is a really nice shot here. The shoulder out, the three-quarter profile, the hatching here of the shadows. Daredevil thinks to himself, fun's not over yet. I hear paws on the grass, a slight panting. So it's a dog, a guard dog. And he thinks a guard dog, the nasty kind that's trained not to bark, a warning, the kind that's trained to kill. So the dog is biting down on his billy club. You can see him stuffing it in the dog's jaws there. And then he flips the dog over onto the spikes. So that's fairly brutal for a Daredevil comic and for Denny O'Neil, really. Some animal violence here. And Daredevil feels remorse. I hated that. He thinks to himself, the poor beast was only doing what it had to, but I couldn't take any chances. I'm not sure how to subdue a Doberman without killing it. So there you go. Recently I reviewed Marvel Comics Presents Wolverine number 8, in which Wolverine was able to subdue Dobermans that had their larynxes taken out so that they wouldn't bark, as security for Roche's compound in Madripoor, Hightown. And basically Wolverine was able to cow the dogs just by his sheer what's the word, like his dominance of them. They recognized him as the dominant animal and they backed down. But Daredevil here having to kill the poor dog. In any case, let's continue with the story. I really like this panel. I like the colors here by Glynis Wine. The double lighting, the light here from the moon on one side of his face, the spotting of blacks. I wonder, did Klaus Janson use some photo reference for that? So the two guys, the two brothers, come out. They're the ones that were up in Manhattan with the buggy. And they're wondering about the dog fell down a hole. Here's Daredevil, he's up in the tree. I like the shadows of the branches of the tree cast over his back there. He leaps across onto the roof of the mansion. And he's thinking all the time about what's going on with this place. Odd, he thinks. I haven't sensed any telephone or electrical wires leading to the house. And they wouldn't be underground this far out in the country. Yet I've heard Cenk earned several million illegal dollars while he was active. And if he could afford to build this palace, he could certainly afford to equip it with the modern amenities. I like the cutting in of white media here into the description of the vegetation here in the yard of the house. That's well done as well. Here's Daredevil. He's thinking, he's touching the glass, and he feels glass is slightly warm, which gives me my starting place, I guess. So in he goes. So he figures someone's warming that room, and there is Jeremiah Cenk, 70 years later from the opening of the story. And he's sitting there in front of a fire. That's the last place we saw him, in front of a fire. He asks who it is. I'm not one of your sons. We haven't met, says Daredevil. And Cenk says, but I know who you are. Daredevil, right. And as you are aware, I'm Jeremiah Cenk. I can't say I'm pleased to make your acquaintance, but come in and warm yourself, he says. You want to arrest me? You haven't heard I've retired? And Daredevil says, I wouldn't want to arrest you even if I were a lawman. Which I'm not exactly. I'm here on behalf of the attorney Matthew Murdoch. He'd like to know the real reason you hired him. So Cenk here says, real reason, eh? The real reason was in the note. I'm an old man, I'm dying. I can feel myself dying second by second. And then he puts his head back. It's really well drawn there, and also the spotting of blacks. And the colouring again from Glynis Oliver, the light coming from the fire against the dark blue of the darkness in the room. It's really well done. And I've much to atone for, he says. So is this guy having a conversion, some contrition at the end of his life of crime? Is what we would be wondering here. And I've much to atone for, oh yes, the counterfeit bills I made. So that's what he did with his artistic talent. They cause degradation and suffering and murder, he says. So he's filled with regrets. I like this sequence of him taking off the glasses. Yeah, that's well done. Worse, when I was not yet grown, I struck down my own father with a log of wood. The sin is unpardonable, he says. The council of elders of the congregation of righteousness, the sacred congregation in which we abide, which is our salvation, they condemned me to death, and I fled to the city, where I used the talent Satan gave me, the making of images, to foster a life of shame and evil. So this guy seems to be going back to the religion of his youth, and he continues here, but always I remained one of the congregation in my heart. I raised my sons in the holy ways, and now myself have repented. I have forsaken the wickedness of the modern world. I eat simple food. I burn candles sent to me from a congregation farm. I pray. So that's why no telephone lines and no electrics in this house. Daredevil here, he's tuned into the guy's heartbeat. It's steady. He's not lying. His pulse beat is steady, he thinks. Again, I really like this angle here. I like the spotting of blacks. I like the play of color. The dark blue against the light yellow as well. It's really, really well done. Of course, you can't see the description of the mask across Daredevil's nose there. Maybe that detail would add to it, perhaps. What does Cenk say as he puts his glasses back on? He says, I retain only my glasses. I cannot bear to give them up. And Daredevil says, I understand. And I really like this thought balloon that Denny O'Neil gives him. More than you can know. So that's nice. What do you want from Murdoch? Asks Daredevil. So Jenks continues, he says, he should plead with the elders to take me back, to punish me, and in punishing to forgive. Murdoch was able to free Melvin Potter, a mass murderer, so a call back to Frank Miller's run on the title. Perhaps his great skill at arguing can soften the elders' wrath. So that's pretty good because, the guy could have hired any lawyer, but he's hiring Matt Murdoch for a very specific reason, and it connects into the history of Matt's his history as a defense attorney, and very specifically getting Melvin Potter off. So that's impressed the guy, and he thinks he could use Matt to argue for him with the congregation. So Daredevil leaves. He says, that's not Murdoch's kind of law, but he'll do his best. And he thinks to himself, and later probably ask himself why. Air, I almost gagged in there. The stench from those candles, the mustiness, the overwhelming sense of torment. It'll be a relief to suck in the pollution of good old Manhattan. Now, the scent of the candles will prove to be a plot point later, so do remember that. Now, here's the guy on his knees. His son's come in, but he's not finished giving orders. He says, get the buggy. I have another errand for you in the city. You're to see an old associate of mine, and that turns out to be the Kingpin. So that's nice detail as well. And he's got a note for the Kingpin. Kingpin's read it. So your father wants protection until the council meets. He was approached by Daredevil, and he fears that if the masked man could breach his defenses, anyone could. He underestimates Daredevil. So that's the Kingpin showing respect, or indicating respect for Daredevil and Daredevil's skills. Not just anyone could break in. Daredevil really does have the skills that allowed him to do that. And I like this is interesting choice on Janson's part, that now we get the establishing shot of the outside of the Kingpin's Manhattan skyscraper. Nonetheless, I shall grant his request, he says. In fact, I shall more than grant it. I shall guarantee that the elders heed your father's wishes. So that's to say he's going to lean on them. And he thinks to himself here as he lights up his cigar, for reasons of my own, having the gratitude of the finest counterfeiter who ever lived might be useful someday. But, come on, Kingpin, the guy's in his 70s. He's approaching 80, if anything. How long more has he got to live? But in any case, the Kingpin always thinking that maybe people in his debt, he'll be able to get something back from them in the future. So very much playing into that, cultural practice of the Italian mafia here being projected onto Kingpin. So Kingpin orders his men to go out and do the work. You'll send them to upstate New York. So, who is there in upstate New York at the farm site of the congregation? It is Foggy Nelson and Matt Murdoch. And Foggy here impressed with these homemade candles. Gee, I love the smell of these candles. But they're called into the meeting. And remember the eye patch from earlier? So this is Nahum Gent, right? So all these biblical names. So we finally learn his name. And he says to them, be aware that you are not welcome, Matthew Murdoch. Speak your piece and quickly, for I've neither time nor patience to waste on you. So this guy's a barrel of laughs, yes? So Matt gets to business. He says, I'm here on behalf of Jeremiah Jenk, and the guy turns around immediately. That name is cursed and shall not be uttered in this place, he says. He who was thus named was condemned to pay the final price 70 years past, and once death has been decreed by the council, the decree can never be rescinded. Now, who are these guys outside with the sticks that are coming towards the building? Also note what's set up here in the room. We've got the candles there, and we have a fire burning, and we have a pot on the boil over the fire too. So the guy keeps ranting. He says, in response to Matt's point that your rules are harsh, he says, do not speak to me of harshness, you who live in the iniquity of what lies beyond our land. We have no crime, we have no violence, we have no divorce. Our people walk in peace all their days on earth. So that all sounds very utopian, living their lives in literal accordance to biblical regulations and rules. But Matt butts in and he says, except those who make a mistake, them you judge without trial. So the guy comes back and replies, yea, and act on that judgment when granted the opportunity. For the book says, ye shall be smitten, ye whited wall. And the book says, vengeance is mine. And Foggy's just sitting outside with his arms crossed, and he's thinking to himself there with that look on his face, boy, sounds like they're really going at it. So they're getting into a little theological, doctrinal debate as, look who's coming in the door with a big stick. So Foggy gets up out of the seat. Hey, what are you doing here? You're one of the Kingpin's thugs. But he's knocked out. Of course, Matt has heard it. Footsteps, 5 men, 3 wearing rubber soles. A groan from Foggy, a falling body. Again, Foggy. So he's aware that trouble's coming through the door, even as Nahum is telling him to get out. So now Matt pulls a stunt. He knocks over the candles there. That was established earlier. So they're out, and then he tips over the pot onto the fire, so the fire goes out. And we get great artistic effects, craft effects from the early 80s here with the use of duo shade here. So you've got a little darker grey up there and then a little lighter grey, and this can be applied with a brush. So that is what Klaus Janson is using on these panels, and especially on this page. Duo shade, not just screen tone, but duo shade, and doing a very good job of it as well. So there's confusion in the smoke and dark, and Daredevil here, this is a great little panel, and this kind of is the inspiration for the cover with the dog added, where he is taking on the Kingpin's men. So we're going to get some fight choreography finally, and Janson thinking about using Miller's device of the full horizontal panel there, but not quite doing it 100% exactly. Again, we've got that duo shade used there. What's going on, asks one of the Kingpin's men. I am, replies Daredevil, using the billy club to knock the gun out of his hand. And you're going out. I got you in my sight, says this guy. But before the gunman can fire, Daredevil flings his club and tonk. So he's knocked out. So now Daredevil's bringing the thugs out of the burning building. And he goes in to find Foggy, I think, as well. And one of the women from the congregation says, the outsider is still stricken, we'll do our best for him. That's Foggy. So Matt says, thanks, glad you're recovering, Nahum, he says to the old man there. You have brought strife to our land, Matthew Murdoch, he says, and confusion. Leave or feel our righteous wrath. Okay, so let's continue here. Oh, we're still going to get a bit of argument between the pair. Matt's got something that he wants to say to this guy. He says, okay, I'll go, but what about Jeremiah? He is smitten, says Nahum. He is being judged. And of course, remember the title of the story. The book says, and now Matt snaps. And we've got that classic Glynis Oliver or Ween background there of red for a moment of violent emotion or emotional intensity. So he's got his finger pointed at the guy. He says, I'll tell you, the book says, wherein thou judgest another, thou condemnest thyself. You'll find it somewhere in St. Paul, he says. So this is like Catholic versus fundamentalist Protestant theological debate here going on in this issue. Like, this isn't the kind of thing you get in Marvel Comics today in 2025, let me tell you. So it's quite enjoyable seeing it here all the way back in 1983. It's good stuff. It's comics that are for children, but that also read well for adults. Double-coded comics, always the best. In my opinion, something for everyone. So in any case, Nahum here, he's been held back. The devil can quote scriptures for his own purpose, but Matt, once he got that off his chest, he's more concerned with Foggy. And Foggy's there going on about the sweet-smelling candles, and this sparks something in Matt's mind. Of course, the candles. Nahum speaking of Jeremiah as though he's already dead. Nahum, he exclaims, I know what you've done. I'll try to save them. If I fail, you'll have nowhere to hide, Nahum Jenk. Nowhere at all. And you can see the distorted reflection of the guy in Matt's spectacles there. That's really well done. It kind of shows the guy as a twisted figure. which is what he is. It is twilight as Daredevil approaches the estate of Jeremiah Jenks, some 40 miles distant, where Kingpin's men are outside guarding it. And Daredevil recognizes one of them. Sounds like Marvin the Tooth, one of the Kingpin's employees. So he tries to argue with them, but they're not listening. And so he just punches them out. That's pretty good. And I like the sound effects. Sock, sock. Just like that. I may already be too late, he says, as he bounds over the wall. He knows all the defenses, the spikes, everything now. But the sons are there guarding the door with the pitchforks. So he's going to have to get past them. I really like this figure drawing of Daredevil there. And also the layout is interesting on this page. So he starts trying to reason with them. Let me pass, please. I don't want to hurt you. Meanwhile, inside is Jeremiah lighting the candles. So the boys start attacking Daredevil. Of course, they're going to be no match for him at all. But look, he's about to get a pitchfork in his backside. But he's alert to it. He uses the other one to stop it. And stops the guy. This is good fight choreography here. The pitchfork fight. Those candles, he says, are the congregation's institute. He says here. He gives more explanation here. On the way here, I figured out what that smell has to be. Arsenic trioxide, a poison used to make the congregation's glass. Every night, with every breath he takes, your father is slowly killing himself. Those candles are the congregation's instruments of execution. Can't you understand? And of course, these guys who've never gone to a chemistry class, basically gives up, throws the pitchfork at him. He says, no, you can't. So he swings on one of the branches of the trees to get into the house, smashes in through the window because he believes he doesn't have a second to wait. You can see like the exaggerated foreshortening here. It looks very cartoony in these two panels. There's Nahum down by the fire. He's not breathing, thinks Daredevil. Good spotting of blacks here. Light and shade, really good stuff. He's dead, but his skin is warm, he thinks. There's a chance. So he throws the candle away, picks him up, and runs to get him out of the house. I love the hatching here on the ground in the backyard, and then the light cast from inside the house out onto the dark grass. That's really well done. This is a nice sequence of 5 panels here, moment to moment, as Daredevil gives Jeremiah the kiss of life. No pulse, no vital signs. He thinks, if I can only get his lungs to pump once, his heart to beat, and then boom, it works with the magenta pulse line there. Welcome to the land of the living, Jeremiah, he says. This is a really interesting panel where we've got the shade of the branches of the tree here down the trunk of the tree, but also over Daredevil's back and over Jeremiah's head and chest there. That's really well done. It looks good. So he picks the old man up. He says, you've been poisoned. The candles, I think Nahum's responsible. So Jenk there, well, I haven't the only devious mind in the family, he concludes. He could be in custody in an hour, and Murdoch could help you prefer charges, says Daredevil. No law, not for an old criminal like me, replies Jeremiah. I have a better plan. Boy, hitch the buggy, he says. This is an interesting panel here with the shadows cast to the left and just all yellow. The light is coming out from the house. Yeah, it's nice colouring, thoughtful colouring from Glynis. And then the last page. So this is our wrap up. So Daredevil's riding the buggy with the old man so that we get the end of the story here. He says to him, you mentioned the plan? And Jeremiah replies, yes. Just before I slept a while ago, I had a realization. I realized that for a full 70 years I've been running, and it's hopeless. Nahum and the congregation and their allies, demons or angels or whatever they may be, mister, they'll chase me past the door of death itself. So I'm going to them. I'm returning home, not to confess my life of crime and sin, and certainly not to plead for their mercy. They've little enough of that, to be sure, and less forgiveness. No, I'll simply present myself and let them do as they will. And so he's going back to the congregation so there can be no modern technology, including spectacles. And they're as modern as the Middle Ages, invented in the year 1280. So this really is strict biblical fundamentalism. Take these, he says, a gift, a souvenir. Not that it matters, but do you understand? He asks. That was a question Daredevil had for himself earlier. Did he understand? And now he says, maybe better than you do at this moment. You're taking responsibility, aren't you, for everything you've done. You're doing what we all have to do finally, passing judgment on yourself, he says. So this is the wrap up. So the guy is on the buggy, there's the moon, and he's heading to the congregation. He's passed judgment on himself, and he's going home after 70 years. And then we end with a biblical quotation, and he looked for judgment, but behold oppression, for righteousness, but behold a cry. But we don't get a little indicator of where that's taken from the Bible. And I'm wondering if Denny O'Neil wants that to be a little puzzle for readers to figure out for themselves. So the answer is the book of Isaiah, chapter 5, verse 7. You can look that up for yourselves. And there you go. A really, really interesting issue of Daredevil, a done-in-one story with a religious subtext concerning the whole theme of judgment, judgment of others and self-judgment. Very, very interesting, kind of mature stuff. So these done-in-ones, issue 191, Miller's, Alan Brennert's 192, Larry Hama's 193, and now Denny O'Neil here. Intriguing. Every single one of them has something interesting about it, and great art by Klaus Janson in this one and the previous two as well. Now, there's a statement of ownership here, so you can see the print numbers of Daredevil, average number of copies during preceding 12 months, 309,000, single issue, nearest filing date 340,000. So those are big numbers in 1983. Miller had brought Daredevil from the brink of cancellation to being the second highest selling Marvel comic after Chris Claremont's Uncanny X-Men. Next issue, Heather Glenn reveals Daredevil's identity. So Heather Glenn is coming back. She hasn't been shuffled off the stage forever, it would appear, and she's coming back with a little bit of revenge, wanting some revenge and payback for there being no wedding between them and for their breakup. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Daredevil 194. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comment section. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like and share the video. It really does help the channel. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.